These are the most interesting historical photos and unusual objects from the past. Let's get 100,000 subscribers. Havana, 1959. The trial of 51-year-old Major Jesus Sosa Blanco drew about 17,000 spectators to the Sports Palace, with reporters and cameras crowding the floor. Shenandoah National Park Ranger Roy Cleveland Sullivan survived 7 lightning strikes between 1942 and 1977, a record noted in park and press reports. He kept patrolling the trails afterward, showing burned hat brims and small scars from the hits. World War I, France. Women crafted life-size decoy heads from papier-mâché and clay to raise above the trench line. When a head drew a shot, observers mapped the angle and pinpointed the sniper's post for precise return aim. Kassel, 1972. The Austrian group Haus Rucker Co. fixed a clear inflatable bubble to the museum wall with a small platform and palm trees inside. Named Oasis No. 7, it tested a plug in microclimate. London, 1966. Members of the playful British Society for the Protection of Miniskirts rallied outside a couture house after rumors that top designers would lower hemlines. Los Angeles, 1952. USC students celebrate after a late-night dorm prank that swept U.S. campuses in the early 1950s, when groups rushed women's residences to grab souvenir clothing. Ukraine, early 1930s. Komsomol youth brigades searched cemeteries and farmyards for hidden grain during state quota campaigns, prying up stone borders to reach the caches. British strongman David Prowse casually lifts a journalist with one hand during a park interview. He is the man inside Darth Vader's suit and also trained Christopher Reeve for the role of Superman. Times Square in 1969. John Lennon and Yoko Ono rented this giant billboard for their message, "War is over, if you want it," as part of a peace campaign. They repeated the line in cities worldwide as a holiday greeting. Brooklyn, 1873. Long Island College Hospital put this horse-drawn carriage into service as the city's first ambulance. It carried a stretcher and a small first aid kit, so doctors could reach patients faster than on foot. West Berlin, early 1960s. Residents balance on a plank to look over the new concrete barrier and talk with friends across the line. In the first months after August 1961, people used small periscopes and mirrors to share news. Rome, 1960. 18-year-old Cassius Clay stands on the podium after winning Olympic gold in the light heavyweight class for the United States. Within 4 years, he would be world champion as Muhammad Ali. New Orleans, 1960. 6-year-old Ruby Bridges walks into William Frantz Public School with United States Marshals on her first day. She became the first African-American child to attend this previously separated elementary school in Louisiana. Havana, 1962. Fidel Castro and Che Guevara tried golf for the cameras after reports that President Dwight Eisenhower chose a round over meeting Castro in 1959. London, 1997. A pub pauses as Queen Elizabeth II addresses the nation after Princess Diana's passing. On the day of the funeral, millions watched in silence from homes, streets, and bars across Britain. Great Britain, late 30s. Engineers created masks for cavalry horses that cover the entire face, with filters for the nose and mouth and transparent lids for the eyes. This design allowed the mounted units to continue working during the gas alert. Ronald McDonald debuted in 1963, first played on local television by weatherman Willard Scott. His look quickly evolved from a paper cup nose and tray hat to the striped outfit seen here as the brand expanded nationwide. Mid-1950s America. Neighbors packed living rooms for Tupperware parties, a direct sales idea led by Brownie Wise that turned plastic bowls into a craze. The famous Burp Seal and live demos built a nationwide network of women sellers and made the brand a household name. Hospitals in the 1930s to 1950s used iron lungs, large chambers that changed air pressure to move the chest and keep breathing during severe polio. Flanders, 1917. An Allied medic wraps the paw of a Red Cross messenger dog that carried notes and small supplies across the lines. These dogs also found missing men and guided stretcher teams at night when radios failed. Rowan Atkinson, at age 17, studied electrical engineering at Newcastle University in 1972, years before Mr. Bean made him famous worldwide. He later completed a master's at Oxford. 1910. Near Williston, North Dakota, a young girl pulls a toy dog in a tiny two-wheeled cart across the open prairie. During the homestead boom, many toys like this were handmade from wood and cloth by family members. The United States, the 30s of the 19th century, the inhabitants of Hooverville built shacks from tin, wooden boxes, and old signs, and made chimneys from scrap metal to keep warm. These slums have grown up next to railway stations and urban landfills. Deadwood, Dakota Territory, late 1870s. Colorado. Charlie Utter and Arapaho Joe set a headstone on the original grave of frontiersman Wild Bill Hickok. Hickok died in August 1876 during a card game. World War I supply teams relied on horses and mules to pull wagons through deep mud, with over 1 million shipped from Britain alone. Only about 65,000 returned after the war, as many were sold overseas or worn down by illness and hard service. Los Angeles, 1975. 2 Fairfax High School students cross campus in wide-collar shirts, platform shoes, and bold striped bell-bottoms. United States, mid-20th century. Camel promoted a 30-day mildness test, claiming not one single case of throat irritation after 2,470 weekly examinations of smokers who used only Camels. The campaign used doctor-style endorsements and office scenes to present smoking as modern and gentle. United States, late 1970s. Furniture showrooms promoted the new waterbed, a vinyl mattress filled with heated water that promised floating sleep. Sales peaked at the end of the 1970s and early 1980s. Winter War, 1939 to 1940. Finnish ski troops in white cover fought a far larger invading force across forests and deep snow, using speed and hidden positions. Against heavy odds, they held the line for months and forced a peace. New York City, late 1880s to 1890s. Cramped wooden tenements packed families into dark backyards with little light or fresh air. Photo reports by Jacob Riis and others sparked new housing codes that began to replace these yards with safer buildings. December 13, 1972. During Apollo 17's final moonwalk in the Taurus-Littrow Valley, Gene Cernan and Jack Schmitt parked the lunar rover and recorded the site with crosshair camera shots. Chukotka, 1974. Explorer. Nikolai Machulyak hand-fed an orphaned polar bear cub, nicknamed Masha, through the Arctic winter with fish and condensed milk. The cub met him daily for careful rations. United States, early 1900s. Drivers turned touring cars into camping cars by deploying canvas cabins in the back. These tents allowed families to sleep on the road during the first big boom of car travel, long before the advent of factory-built motorhomes. July 21, 1969. The Daily Mirror front page blared, "Man walks on the moon," as Britain woke to Neil Armstrong's first steps at Oro 256 UTC on the Sea of Tranquility. An estimated 600 million people watched live. Early 1900s. Hungary. A toddler stands in a wooden walker nicknamed Kati, a simple frame used in farm homes to help little ones balance. Carpentry shops made these sturdy walkers by hand, and families passed them down for years. Wilcox, Arizona. A black bear climbed a power pole and sat on the crossarm, stunning the small town below. Power crews briefly cut electricity and carefully guided the animal down, and it trotted back to open country. Philadelphia. The small brick home at 239 Arch Street is known as the Betsy Ross House, where tradition says the first American flag was sewn, and it opened as a museum in 1937 after preservation work. Rogers, Arkansas, circa 1900. A girl waits in a small goat-drawn cart outside the Fred Harvey lunchroom beside the railroad tracks. Harvey houses fed rail travelers across the Santa Fe system, and station photographers often posed local children with carts and pets. Washington, 1962. President John F. Kennedy walks beside his daughter Caroline as she pushes a toy stroller, with agents and aides a few steps back. Mid-1960s supermarket signs bragged Campbell's tomato soup at 9 cents a can, nectarines at 19 cents a pound, and old-fashioned ice cream at 49 cents for a half-gallon. With wages and rent lower too, many families filled a week's cart for just a few dollars. In the 1950s, many mountain chairlifts used open single seats with no safety bar or footrest, just a hook on the cable. Riders glided high over long valleys for the view, and those early designs later led to wider chairs and locking bars. Britain's Big Freeze of 1962 to 1963 arrived on Boxing Day, burying roads in deep drifts and holding temperatures below zero for weeks as canals, ponds, and parts of the Thames iced over. Rail lines and villages were cut off, football schedules broke down. Cody, Wyoming, 1908. The Irma Hotel was built by William F. Buffalo Bill Cody in 1902 and named for his daughter, Irma. Its dining room holds a grand cherrywood back bar said to be a gift from Queen Victoria. October 1862, Sharpsburg, Maryland. President Abraham Lincoln visits General George B. McClellan at the Army of the Potomac camp days after the Battle of Antietam. Within weeks, Lincoln removed McClellan from command. Lexington, Virginia, October 15, 1870. The horse-drawn funeral cortege of Robert E. Lee moves along Main Street toward the chapel at Washington College for burial. The school was renamed Washington and Lee University the next year. In 1998, some Burger King locations installed in-store internet stations so guests could go online while eating. Chains tested free email and pay-by-the-minute web access before home broadband made kiosks fade away. Pripyat, April 27, 1986. A woman stands before the new Ferris wheel that was set to open on May 1st. After the nearby Chernobyl plant accident, the city was evacuated that day, and the ride never carried paying visitors. Chernobyl, 1986. Liquidator crews hauled steel and poured concrete within sight of the damaged Unit 4 to start the first protective sarcophagus. Working in short-timed shifts with masks and dosimeters, they stabilized debris so the site could be sealed before winter. Debbie Fields opened her first cookie shop in Palo Alto in 1977 at age 20, and by 1982, her fresh-baked model had grown into a fast-expanding national chain. She built the brand on warm-from-the-oven samples and consistent recipes that turned mall walk-bys into lines. Britain, World War II. Every citizen carried a ration book like this, filled with weekly coupons for staples such as butter, sugar, meat, and tea. Shopkeepers clipped or stamped the coupons at purchase so supplies could be shared fairly during shortages. United Airlines flight attendant in 1970 sits at a cabin service station with an intercom phone and control panel from the first wave of wide-body jets. Early 70s cabins added lounges, bright colors, and home-style trim to make long flights feel like a living room in the sky. Late 1930s, tenant farmer Oscar Gaither's family sits to a simple supper in their cabin near McLeansboro, Illinois, documented by New Deal photographers. Pictures like this helped shape relief programs and rural electrification by showing everyday farm life. Muscle Beach, 1945. 9-year-old April performs a human stack, supporting her father, mother, and sister for a combined weight reported at over 425 pounds. Muscle Beach in Santa Monica was a post-war stage for acrobats and lifters. Decades later, a veteran restages his 1966 snapshot from Vietnam, matching the helmet, web gear, and even the box in hand for a perfect then and now echo. North Wilkesboro, 1921. Lucius S. Lowe opened Lowe's North Wilkesboro Hardware, a small family store selling lumber, roofing, and appliances. After mid-century expansion under Jim Lowe and H. Carl Buchan, it grew into one of America's largest home improvement chains. A quick snap outside the tent caught a whole ring of curious raccoons, their eyes glowing from the flash like tiny lanterns. Camp scents can draw entire family groups. These nimble foragers can open zippers and coolers. Las Vegas, 1965. Nancy Sinatra hugs her father Frank, while family friend Yul Brynner looks on at the sands, the Rat Pack's favorite stage. Within a year, Nancy would top charts with "These Boots Are Made for Walkin'." New York, April 2, 1979. Ballet legend Rudolf Nureyev trades grand jeté for disco steps at Studio 54, playfully mirroring 9-year-old actor Ricky Schroeder on the floor. Germany, 1945. Ukrainian displaced families gather at an Allied relief kitchen, one of many set up inside new camps at war's end. By summer, more than 8 million people were registered as displaced persons in Germany. 1912. A former U.S. president on the campaign trail reaches from a flag-draped stand to greet a native rider, a moment captured during his Progressive Party tour. The handshake echoed his public push for Western conservation and national parks. In 1946, PCA Capital Airlines advertised a $14.90 flight to New York in 98 minutes from Pittsburgh's William Penn Hotel ticket office, about $241 in today's money. The hop was flown by a propeller airliner like the DC-3, a post-war symbol of fast travel for regular people. October 18, 1963. The French cat Félicette rode a Veronique AG-1 sounding rocket on a suborbital flight to about 157 kilometers, while electrodes sent her brain signals to the ground. She returned by parachute after about 13 minutes. Oxford, 1870. 7-year-old Julia Ann Crumpling was recorded at Oxford Castle and Prison after taking a baby carriage and received a sentence of 7 days hard labor. Her small mugshot became a stark example of how Victorian courts documented and punished child offenders. Chicago, October 1871. Men stand on the ruins at LaSalle and Washington after a wind-driven blaze burned more than 3 square miles and about 17,000 buildings. The city rebuilt fast, launching new fire codes and the steel frame boom. William Henry Fox Talbot photographed this haystack in 1844 using his new calotype paper negative process, the method that let images be multiplied. It appeared in The Pencil of Nature, the first commercially published book. Late 1800s hotels posted signs like this to teach guests use to gas lamps. Do not strike a match, just turn the wall key for Edison electric light. The health note calmed early fears that current or electric air could harm sleep. James Gregory sits for a studio portrait on the day he became Morristown, New Jersey's first black police officer, a local milestone in public service. His badge opened doors for future recruits. February 9, 1920. A railroad worker who dreamed of being a cartoonist turned his envelope into a mini-comic, inking a tiny self-portrait at the desk beside the address. These illustrated letters were pocket-size mail art, keeping family close while trains carried him far from home. New York, August 16, 1920. A teenage ironworker sits on a thin beam high above the streets, hammer in hand, during the steel frame boom. Safety lines were rare then, and photos like this promoted new towers while showing one of the few women on the job. Early 1960s polio clinics stamped cards like this after giving the oral Sabin drops, often on a sugar cube. The 3 dates mark doses for type 1, type 2, and type 3 viruses, which helped wipe out local outbreaks. Marie Curie turned cars into little Curies, mobile X-ray clinics with engine-powered generators and a darkroom, so medics could find fractures near the front in World War I. Lou Gehrig, baseball icon, auditioned for Tarzan in 1936, wearing a leopard skin outfit and holding a spear to impress Hollywood producers. He was rejected because his strong legs were considered too muscular for the role. Maurice Tillet, born in 1903, was a Russian-French wrestler known as the French Angel, whose acromegaly gave him a striking appearance. Many assume that his appearance inspired the character Shrek, but DreamWorks officially denies this connection. A semester at Harvard College in 1869 cost $170.42, which included tuition, room, fuel, and board. Adjusted for inflation, this is about $4,000 in modern terms. Daniel Waldo, born in 1762, survived as a prisoner of war during the American Revolution and later became chaplain of the House of Representatives. Photographed in 1864 at over 100 years old, he was one of the very last Revolutionary War veterans. On December 28, 1920, Amelia Earhart took her first flight in California, which ignited her passion for aviation. Just 16 years later, she vanished mysteriously over the Pacific Ocean during her world flight attempt. On May 11, 1917, Kurdish girls in traditional dress were photographed carrying water jars near Zakho, Iraq, capturing a rare color glimpse of daily rural life during the First World War. On November 25, 1919, Luisa Tetrazzini, the world-famous Italian soprano, arrived in New York aboard the Mauretania to begin her American tour. Known for her dramatic flair and voice, she was so celebrated that the popular pasta dish Tetrazzini was named in her honor. On December 25, 1916, British soldiers gathered in a muddy shell crater on the Western Front to share a makeshift Christmas dinner amid the chaos of World War I. Their meal was a rare moment of comfort and camaraderie, surrounded by devastation. On April 8, 1920, the Chicago Post Office provided employees with roller skates so that parcels could be delivered faster through the huge sorting floors. This unusual method has increased the speed and efficiency of employees' work. Elizabeth Cochrane, known as Nellie Bly, became a pioneer of investigative journalism after she exposed the terrible conditions in a New York psychiatric hospital and helped to implement mental health reforms. She became famous for circumnavigating the globe alone in 72 days in 1889. The suffering of street children like Jim Jarvis from Whitechapel prompted Thomas Barnardo's to open his first orphanage and Ragamuffin School in 1867 to provide food, shelter, and education to underprivileged East London children. Barnardo's vow to never refuse children changed the views of Victorians. Bruce Lee's training, conducted in 1965 at the Hak Kyung Gym in Hong Kong, focused mainly on arm strength and included exercises such as squats, 3 sets of 10 repetitions at 95 pounds, French bench press, bends, push-ups with extra weight, and various flexions for biceps and triceps. On January 27, 1945, Soviet troops liberated Auschwitz, Birkenau, and Monowitz, saving about 7,000 starving prisoners and discovering about 600 corpses left by retreating German guards. Covered in coal dust after a long shift underground, these miners stopped by a company store in Pursglove, West Virginia, to buy groceries before heading home. In the 1930s, in coal towns like Pursglove, workers used company-owned shops on a daily basis. Emily Dickinson retired from society when she was in her late 30s and lived almost as a recluse in her family home in Amherst, Massachusetts, maintaining contacts through extensive correspondence with literary friends such as Thomas Wentworth Higginson. Francesco Lentini, born in Sicily in 1889, became famous for having 3 legs and 4 feet, and for more than 40 years touring as the Great Lentini in America's largest circuses. He charmed the audience with his wit and skill, and lived to be 77 years old. The First Men on the Moon is a 1919 British silent film based on the science fiction novel by H.G. Wells and featuring bizarre moon creatures and special effects that shocked audiences at the time. For more than 160 years, Canada's Indian boarding school system has been focused on assimilating Indigenous children, separating them from their families, languages, and traditions. About 150,000 children were sent to schools run by Christian churches. On April 27, 1865, the onboard steamer Sultana exploded on the Mississippi River, carrying more than 2,000 recently liberated Union soldiers, which far exceeded its capacity. From 1890 to 1930, the Coal Wars led miners in Appalachia and Colorado to rebel against dangerous working conditions and unfair wages, leading to fierce battles such as the Battle of Blair Mountain and the Ludlow Massacre. In 1957, rock star Jerry Lee Lewis married his 13-year-old cousin, Myra Gale Brown, when he was 22, and he was still married to his previous wife. The scandal damaged his reputation, which led to the cancellation of tours and bans on the radio. Stephen Bishop, an enslaved black Kentuckian, was one of the earliest American speleologists to map and discover passages in the Mammoth Cave in 1838, decades before mass speleological exploration began. In 1933, Shelley's study of Whittier, California, installed a 9.5-inch Zeiss refractor telescope on a car, creating a mobile observatory that took astronomy to new locations. This innovative telescope later became used for public stargazing and scientific observations. During the filming of the epic movie Ben-Hur in Rome in 1959, Charlton Heston and Stephen Boyd took fun breaks riding a Vespa through the Cinecittà studios in their vintage costumes. In 1933, retired Marine General Smedley Butler claimed that a group of wealthy businessmen and bankers approached him with a request to lead a coup d'etat against President Franklin D. Roosevelt in order to install Butler as dictator through a fascist veterans organization. During the Mexican Revolution, the U.S. Army was stationed along the border and clashed with Mexican troops, especially after the infamous Pancho Villa attack on Columbus, New Mexico in 1916. In January 1917, the German Foreign Ministry sent a telegram to Zimmermann, a secret request for Mexico to join the German military alliance if the United States entered World War I. A note intercepted by British intelligence promised Mexico support in the return of Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico. In December 1950, during the Battle of Chosin Reservoir, U.S. Marines in Hagaruri watched as F-4U Corsair planes dropped napalm on advancing Chinese troops to protect their perimeter. The close air support of the Corsairs played a crucial role on the battlefield. During the retreat from the Chosin Reservoir in December 1950, Chinese troops destroyed the bridge at the Funchalen Pass, blocking the only escape route for American and British troops. American military engineers have restored the crossing by assembling the prefabricated sections of the bridge dropped by C-119 aircraft. In 1878, a leak in the Royal Bath prompted Major Charles Davis, the city surveyor and architect, to explore the area and discover Roman tiles, lead, and ceramics, the first steps toward discovering ancient Roman baths. The Mozart's Kitchen restaurant is located at 9 Getreidegasse in Salzburg, Austria, where Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart was born in 1756 and lived with his family until 1773. This kitchen, which is part of the original apartment on the 3rd floor, has been preserved and restored as part of the museum where Mozart was born. Maria Sklodowska-Curie was a pioneering physicist and chemist who became famous for the discovery of the elements polonium and radium, and for her pioneering research in the field of radioactivity. She won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1903. Simo Häyhä, known as the White Death, became a legend during the Winter War between Finland and the Soviet Union, committing more than 500 confirmed sniper kills using only iron sights. The flood in Johnstown on May 31, 1889, wiped the city off the face of the earth after the South Fork Dam burst, bringing down a wall of water comparable in strength to the Mississippi River. Richard and Mildred Loving's quarrel led to a 1967 Supreme Court decision that overturned all state laws prohibiting interracial marriage, changing the future of marriage equality in America. Their courage transformed civil rights and paved the way for families of all backgrounds to be protected by the Constitution. In October of the 38th year, when Orson Welles was only 23 years old, he organized the legendary radio show The War of the Worlds, forcing thousands of people to believe in the invasion of the Martians. This audacious stunt instantly made him America's most talked-about young genius. The exterior of the Millennium Falcon was famously inspired by automotive culture, speed, and hands-on design experience. The designers studied racing cars and fighter jets to give the ship a rugged, lived-in look. The car in the photo belonged to the legendary mechanic, whose simplified functional cockpit became a real-life model of the most iconic ship in the history of Star Wars. Since the 10th century, Nablus has been famous for its olive oil soap, which is produced using a slow, traditional process that transforms local olives into ivory bars with almost no odor. The sun in the factory workshops. On August 1, 1914, Berliners watched as officers posted the official mobilization decree, launching Germany into World War I. Many boys stared up in awe, unaware that this single poster marked the beginning of a catastrophe that would reshape their entire world. After the battleship Maine exploded in the harbor of Havana in 1898, improvised recruitment tents like this one appeared throughout the United States, which spurred the flow of volunteers to the Spanish-American War. Traveling medicine salesmen like this one brought patent remedies and miracle tonics to isolated towns across Oklahoma in 1895. Their horse-drawn wagons, stacked with bottles and promises, became rolling pharmacies and showpieces of frontier ingenuity. From the 1960s to the 1980s, Soviet prison tattoos became a coded language where each symbol indicated the criminal's rank, experience, and personal defiance. Stars, panthers, and prison bars all told their own stories. Only criminals of the highest rank, called thieves in law, could wear certain tattoos. At 16 in 1963, David Lynch posed with his first painting, an atmospheric work echoing the strange visuals that would later define his films. This was the start of a creative journey that led from easel to cinema. The 1971 Munich hostage crisis saw masked gunmen take bank staff hostage, sparking a tense standoff that shocked West Germany. The dramatic rescue attempt and media frenzy around the event led to changes in police tactics and inspired the term Stockholm Syndrome. In 1942, the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet donned gas masks and practiced air raid drills, a haunting glimpse of home front fears during World War II. Their dedication symbolized how even convents braced for the nightmare of chemical warfare that threatened every American community. During the Chinese Cultural Revolution from 1967 to 1972, students across China held public struggle meetings where they denounced and humiliated teachers accused of being anti-revolutionary. Inside 1950s doll factories, endless rows of unfinished rubber and plastic dolls created an eerie, otherworldly sight as they waited for faces and voices to be added. Advances in vinyl and assembly line techniques turned these lifeless forms into beloved toys for the booming post-war generation. In 1940s Iraq, Betty Boop appeared in local ads promoting cigarettes, encouraging moviegoers to smoke at the cinema for a glamorous experience. This American icon spread Western pop culture in Baghdad, blending animation with the era's bold tobacco marketing. In the early 1900s, syphilis clinics documented the impressive results of experimental treatments by photographing patients before and after lengthy procedures. These clear images often showed striking improvements thanks to new drugs. This 1926 photograph from the Art of the Prisoner series by Hans Prinzhorn depicts a tattooed woman whose body became the basis for her survival, resistance, and self-identification. Her handmade tattoos of lions, daggers, and stars were explicit messages of power, loss, and longing. Luigi Russolo was an Italian futurist artist, composer, and inventor who transformed modern music by organizing experimental noise concerts and creating innovative intonarumori machines. His 1913 manifesto, The Art of Noise, challenged tradition and promoted the harsh sounds of industry. At the end of the 19th century in Sitka, Alaska, Tlingit shamans performed dramatic rituals to force those accused of witchcraft to confess and remove the spell, often to cure diseases or restore balance in society. In the 1970s, in the Hutsul village of Krivorivnya, Ivano-Frankivsk region, Ukraine, a traditional church acolyte named Palomar was depicted holding an ornate handmade crosspiece known as the Trinity. Such artifacts occupy a central place in Hutzul religious ceremonies. The Virtues. Crushing the Vices is an iconic sculpture group from the north portal of Strasbourg Cathedral, created in the 13th century and famously photographed in 1853 by Charles Marville. These Gothic statues personify virtues triumphing over vices. In late June and early July 1966, the Velvet Underground played at Chicago's Playboy Club, performing a surreal daytime set among stylish clubgoers and bunny-costumed waitresses. The band's dark, avant-garde sound collided with the glamorous scene, marking one of their most unusual and legendary gigs. This photo shows an experiment on the physiology of Soviet-era physical exercises, typical of the expositions of the Latvian Museum of the History of Medicine in Riga. The museum features historical medical devices, including astronaut training equipment and physiological testing stands. Henry Flus's 1879 rebreather was the first practical self-contained diving set, using oxygen and a chemical to remove carbon dioxide. It let divers work in flooded tunnels without surface hoses and opened the way to modern closed-circuit systems. Frontier settlers along the Missouri River in the North Dakota Badlands often hung shed elk and deer antlers on porches for decoration and for practical hooks. This log cabin scene hints at the isolated life of homesteaders who worked the harsh but resource-rich Badlands. Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev made corn his star crop after visiting farms in the United States in the year 1959. He urged fields across the country to plant maize, even in cold zones, a bold push that brought big promises but uneven results. This wobe, also called mask from Ivory Coast, was worn by a dancer during festivals and community rites, with cone ornaments and a carved mouth that helped carry sound. Its strong shapes and heavy decoration were designed to command attention and mark the presence of tradition. On 6 April 1945, United States Army infantry moved through thick forest near Siegen, Germany, advancing toward a barracks held by German forces. The fallen trees and steep ground show why operations here demanded slow steps and close teamwork. In 1993, 6 hikers near Lake Baikal in Siberia reportedly fell suddenly ill during a trek, with breathing trouble and disorientation. The cause remains unclear in public accounts, and this photo is often linked to that mystery. A glass bottle found in a Utah mountain crevice held a worn map of the University of California, Los Angeles, a frequency chart, and pages filled with coded notes. It may be a homegrown puzzle or scavenger cache from the 1970s, yet the marked symbols keep the mystery open. This early vial recalls the year 1928, when Alexander Fleming noticed a stray mold that stopped bacteria in his lab. By the early 1940s, mass production turned that clue into a medicine that saved countless lives. On June 25, 1951, CBS aired Premiere, one of the first color television broadcasts in the United States. Few viewers saw it in color because sets were rare, but it launched the color era that spread through the 1950s. Mary Ann Bevan, a nurse and mother of 4, developed acromegaly in the early 1900s and entered a notorious Ugliest Woman contest to earn money after her husband died. The publicity led to steady stage work at fairs and circuses, which let her support her children until her death in the year 1933. During a street festival in Spain in the year 1977, locals crowded onto a window ledge as a calm but powerful bull paused below. Josef Kudelka captured the tense quiet that comes just before the rush in this famous scene. A member of the Women's Army Corps poses with a "Help keep this area clean" sign, turning a simple reminder into a playful public message in the 1950s. Morale posts like this mixed humor with everyday rules on many bases. This streamlined prototype is the Killinger und Freund from the year 1935, a German design with a 3-cylinder 2-stroke engine built inside the front wheel. United States Army troops photographed it in the year 1945 after finding it on a German base, and the coming peace ended any chance of production. In the early 1960s, Ray Kroc tested the hula burger, a bun with a grilled pineapple ring and cheese, as a Friday meat-free option for customers who skipped meat. It went up against the filet-o fish in a sales test, lost, and vanished while the fish sandwich became a classic. Apache Man in the Arizona Territory, c. 1880, holding an Evans repeating rifle and wearing a cartridge belt. Built in Maine, 1873-1879, the Evans used a helical buttstock magazine holding up to 34 cartridges, rare on the frontier. Adolf Hitler meets Italian officials in Germany, August 1939. He wears a seldom-seen white summer uniform, photographed weeks before World War II began. Nikola Tesla's funeral at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York City, January 12, 1943. His casket was draped with the flags of the United States and Yugoslavia, marking his life across both nations. President Franklin D. Roosevelt stands with a cane beside Eleanor Roosevelt and Madam Chiang Kai-shek, Sung Mei-ling, 1943. Photos of him upright are uncommon. Aides typically helped him balance for formal moments. Vintage catalog ad for a battery-operated facial massager priced at $4.99, marketed for use around the eyes, brows, chin, and other areas. It promised to soothe away tension, improve circulation, and help apply creams and lotions, running on 2C batteries. Sonny Liston spars with a young George Foreman in a gym, late 1960s. Liston was a former heavyweight champion, while Foreman had just won 1968 Olympic gold and was headed toward the 1973 title. Ronald Reagan testifies before the House Un-American Activities Committee in Washington, D.C., 1947. Then president of the Screen Actors Guild, he addressed alleged communist influence in Hollywood. Photos of him wearing eyeglasses are uncommon. Constanze Mozart, born Constanze Weber, the widow of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, seen in a family group around 1840. This early daguerreotype is a rare surviving image of someone from Mozart's immediate circle. Camel Thanksgiving advertisement promoting cigarettes during the meal, c. mid-20th century. The copy links smoking to good digestion and even suggests a cigarette after each course. Tinian Air Base, Northern Mariana Islands, August 5, 1945, Captain William Parsons, left, and Colonel Paul Tibbets, right, speak at a mission briefing. Parsons served as the weaponeer, and Tibbets piloted the B-29 Enola Gay for the following day's Hiroshima mission. Ken Westerfield with his dog during early Frisbee demonstrations, 1970s. A pioneer of disc freestyle, his public shows and tournaments helped popularize disc sports across North America. Colonel Harland Sanders, founder of Kentucky Fried Chicken, meets rock singer Alice Cooper, c. late 1970s. The unlikely pairing was photographed at a hospitality event, with Sanders in his trademark white suit. Fans at an Elvis Presley concert, c. 1956, clap and cover their ears as the crowd drowns out the small PA system. Newspapers across the U.S. reported similar scenes during his first national tours, often calling it Presley Mania. San Francisco, April 1942. Japanese-American children at a public school recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Weeks later, under Executive Order 9066, many Bay Area families were sent to wartime relocation centers. Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, 1933-1934. A fleet of new Lincoln automobiles for the Soviet state travel agency Intourist lines up on Vorovsky Square beside the Nicholas I Monument. Intourist used American luxury cars to transport foreign visitors during early 1930s tourism drives. Ronald Reagan, age 16, working as a lifeguard at Lowell Park on the Rock River near Dixon, Illinois, 1927. Over 7 summers, he recorded many rescues. Local reports credited him with 77. Kent, England, 1938. 70-year-old Elizabeth Arnold, shoes a horse outside a 400-year-old forge. Contemporary reports build her as England's only woman blacksmith, a rare figure in the trade. IBM 305 RAMAC hard drive from 1956 stored 5 megabytes on 50 24-inch disks in a cabinet the size of a refrigerator. It weighed about 1 ton and used a moving head for direct access, a first in data storage. Declassified image of a CIA spy pigeon fitted with a small chest-mounted film camera, 1960s. The birds were flown over targets to take low-altitude photos for Cold War surveillance, including missions near the Soviet Union. Bronx, June 1906. 2 motorists arrive at Huber's Hotel on 162nd Street after a 10-month, 11,000-mile drive in a 16-horsepower REO. Built by Ransom E. Olds, the car's endurance run ranked among the longest publicity drives of the era. Paris Toy Workshop, early 1900s. A craftsman assembles the internal metal linkages of a large doll by hand. French makers were leaders in bisque head and clockwork dolls of this era, adding mechanisms for turning heads and moving arms. Elizabeth Taylor as Cleopatra on the set of Cleopatra, 1963. The epic was the most expensive film of its era, and Taylor wore over 60 costumes as the production went on to win 4 Academy Awards. Kiss pose with geisha performers in Tokyo during their 1978 Japan visit. Their theatrical makeup and arena show fueled a surge of popularity there, with multiple releases going gold. Tokyo, November 1, 1973. Shoppers crowd a supermarket aisle during a run on toilet paper. A rumor linked to the oil crisis warned of shortages, triggering nationwide buying until officials reassured supplies within weeks. Elton John, Mark Bolan, Ringo Starr, and Mickey Finn at the London premiere of Ringo's concert film Born to Boogie, December 14, 1972. The film captured T-Rex at their peak, with guest turns from John and Starr. Leon Theremin's long-distance vision system, Dalnovisor, during a public demo in the USSR, 1926. This early television prototype used mechanical scanning, mirror drums, and photoelectric cells to transmit an image to a remote screen. White House lawn, 1918. President Woodrow Wilson kept a flock of 18 sheep to graze the grounds while gardeners served in the war. The wool was auctioned for wartime charities, turning the lawn into a small fundraiser during World War I. United States, circa 1900. A horse-powered ferry turns its paddle wheels with a treadmill as 2 draft horses walk inside the cabin, pushing the boat across the river. These team boats carried wagons and passengers on rural crossings before gasoline engines were common. Arnold Schwarzenegger stands beside 7'1" Shaquille O'Neal in the United States, 1993. That year, O'Neal won National Basketball Association Rookie of the Year, while Schwarzenegger promoted Last Action Hero, making this height contrast image a media favorite. Czechoslovakia, 1945. A Stu G3 assault gun crew brushes on improvised winter whitewash while the vehicle's thin Scherzen side plates hang along the hull. Field-applied lime paint like this was common in late war conditions for quick snow camouflage. Senator Warren G. Harding, later the 29th U.S. President, holds a sousaphone during a 1920 campaign event in Marion, Ohio. The marching band instrument was a staple at local rallies, making it a frequent prop in publicity photos of the era. Seaforth Highlanders sit in a frontline trench with a small unit dog, 1915. The kilted Scottish regiment often kept trench mascots for morale during long rotations on the Western Front. Studio lineup contrasts women's swimwear from circa 1900, high-neck dresses with bloomers, to the sleek one-piece of the late 1930s-1940s. Hemlines rose and fabrics shifted from heavy wool to elastic knits as beachwear modernized. China, 20th century. A woman farmer carries 2 baskets of watermelons with a traditional shoulder pole, bian dan, while visiting athletes each lift one by hand. The springy pole distributes weight and, in trained hands, moves about 50-100 kilograms efficiently. Ann Arbor, 1949, University of Michigan. Researchers mix measured doses in a physiology lab to study how alcohol affects the body. Volunteers then recorded reaction time, eye tracking, pulse, and body temperature under controlled conditions. Sofia Ivanovna Blyuvstein, known as Sonia Zolotaya Ruchka, photographed in 1881 at Lushki in the Irkutsk Governorate, Siberia. Exiled in 1880, she escaped in 1885 and was linked to several high-profile jewel theft cases, including the Karl von Mel affair. Soviet school computer class, mid-1980s. Students use Agate 4 microcomputers with CRT displays, 8-bit, 64 KB RAM, and a floppy drive. School software included a spreadsheet clone, text editor, and games. Later models added partial Apple II compatibility, making Agate widespread in the USSR. MS St. Louis returns to Europe after North American ports denied entry to its Jewish refugees, June 1939. Two girls look out a porthole as the ship docks at Antwerp, a quiet scene from a voyage later remembered for its refusal of asylum. Let's get 100,000 subscribers. Write your opinion in the comments.